The rain was beating against the glass of the quiet coffee shop when Clara walked in, looking like she had just seen a ghost. I had known Clara for 2 years as the quiet, hard-working architect who lived across the hall from my small apartment. I was just a widowed mechanic raising my 4-year-old daughter, Maya, working 16-hour days at the garage to keep a roof over our heads. We had shared friendly smiles in the hallway and small talk near the mailboxes, but I never imagined she would ever ask me for what came next. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands trembling as she held a cup of warm tea. Her eyes were red, filled with a mixture of terror and desperation. "Leo," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the espresso machine. "I need to ask you something crazy, and you have complete freedom to say no." I leaned forward, looking into her eyes. "What's wrong, Clara? Is someone hurting you?" She shook her head, biting her lower lip until it almost bled. "My family. My father is the chairman of Vance Logistics. He's forcing me into an arranged marriage with a corrupt senator's son to merge our companies. If I refuse, he strips my entire career away and cuts me off completely." I frowned, confused as to why she was telling me this. "Clara, I'm just a mechanic. How can I help you with rich corporate politics?" She took a deep breath, looked straight into my eyes, and asked the sentence that made my heart drop. "Would you pretend to be my husband?" The cafe seemed to go completely silent. I sat back, staring at her in sheer disbelief. "Your husband? Clara, look at me. I wear grease-stained boots, I drive a beat-up truck, and I'm a single father. Your family will see right through me in 5 seconds." "They won't," she urged, reaching across the table to grab my hand. Her touch sent a sudden spark through my chest that took me completely by surprise. "They think I'm weak, Leo. They think I'll bend to their wills. But if I show up to the annual family gala tonight with a fiercely protective husband by my side, they can't force the marriage. Please, just for one night." I looked down at her soft hand resting on mine. I thought about the way she always brought home-baked cookies for Maya, the way her smile brightened up the dark hallway every evening, and the unspoken tension that had been growing between us for months. A small, dangerous smirk played on my lips as I leaned in closer to her face. "Do I get to kiss my wife?" I asked softly, my eyes locking onto hers. Clara's breath hitched, a faint blush rushing to her cheeks. She didn't pull her hand away. Instead, her grip tightened around mine. "If the moment calls for it, husband," she whispered, her voice trembling with an emotion that felt entirely too real for a fake arrangement. "You do whatever it takes to make them believe it." 3 hours later, I was transformed. Clara had brought me a tailored Italian suit that fit my broad shoulders perfectly. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting my black tie, barely recognizing the rugged man looking back at me. When Clara stepped out of her room wearing a stunning emerald green silk dress that hugged her curves, my jaw literally dropped. She looked like royalty. "You look—" I lost my words, stepping toward her. "Don't finish that sentence, Leo," she smiled nervously, adjusting my collar. "We have a performance to give. Remember, my father is ruthless, and Julian, the man they want me to marry, is an arrogant snake. They will try to humiliate you." I wrapped my hand firmly around her waist, pulling her close against my chest until there was no space between us. Clara gasped softly, her breath hitting my neck. "Let them try, sweetheart," I whispered in her ear, feeling her heartbeat racing against my ribs. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." The Vance estate was a sprawling mansion lit up like a palace, filled with hundreds of wealthy elites, politicians, and paparazzi. As our luxury car pulled up to the red carpet, I could feel Clara shaking beside me. I took her hand, brought it to my lips, and kissed her knuckles gently. "Look at me, Clara. Tonight, you're not alone. I've got you." She nodded, taking a deep breath as the valet opened our door. The moment we walked through the grand glass entrance arm in arm, heads began to turn. The high society guests whispered behind their champagne glasses, staring at the mysterious, powerful-looking man standing next to the heiress. Then, the crowd parted, and 2 men approached us with cold, predatory eyes. The older man was Arthur Vance, Clara's cold-hearted billionaire father. Beside him stood Julian, a tall, smirking man in a flashy suit, holding a glass of scotch like he owned the entire world. "Clara," her father snapped, his voice cold as ice. "Where have you been?" "Julian has been waiting for you to announce the engagement." Julian sneered, stepping closer and completely ignoring my presence. "Come here, Clara. Stop playing games and take your place next to me." Before Julian could reach out to touch Clara's arm, I stepped right in front of her, placing my heavy frame between them. The smile vanished from Julian's face. "Keep your hands to yourself," I said, my voice dropping an octave, echoing with a quiet authority that made the surrounding guests freeze. Arthur Vance glared at me with absolute disgust. "Who the hell are you? A bodyguard? Move out of the way before I have security throw you onto the street." Clara stepped up beside me, lacing her fingers through mine and leaning her head against my shoulder. "He's not a bodyguard, Father," Clara said, her voice louder and more confident than I had ever heard it before. "This is Leo, my husband." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Arthur's face turned bright red, and Julian almost choked on his drink. "Husband?" Julian laughed bitterly, trying to regain his composure. "Clara, this is a joke, right? Look at him. What does he do? What company does he own?" Julian stepped up to my face, trying to intimidate me. "Tell us, husband, what do you bring to the table besides a cheap suit?" I didn't flinch. I looked Julian dead in the eye, stepping half an inch closer until he had to tilt his head up to look at me. "I bring loyalty, respect, and protection," I said, my voice icy calm. "Things a boy like you could never buy with his father's money. And if you disrespect my wife again in my presence, you're going to find out real fast what else I bring to the table." Julian's smirk completely vanished. He took an instinctive step back, swallowed hard, and looked to Arthur for help. Arthur was shaking with fury. "This marriage is invalid. I will disown you, Clara. I will pull every investment from your architectural firm. You will have nothing." The room was dead silent, waiting for Clara to break under the immense pressure of her billionaire father. That was when I pulled a black leather wallet from my inner jacket pocket, pulled out a gold medal card, and casually handed it to Arthur Vance. Arthur sneered, looking down at the card, expecting a garage business card. But as his eyes read the bold black letters on the golden medal, his face went completely pale. The anger in his eyes turned into pure terror. This is a black sovereign card," Arthur stammered, his fingers trembling so hard he almost dropped it. "Only the top directors of Apex Global Logistics hold these. How do you have this?" What Arthur Vance didn't know was that before I retired to raise my daughter in peace after my wife passed, I was the co-founder and chief operating officer of Apex Global, the very conglomerate that owned all of Arthur's corporate debts. I had walked away from the billionaire lifestyle to be a simple father, but I still held the master keys to the financial world. "I don't just hold the card, Arthur," I whispered, leaning in so only he and Julian could hear. "I own 60% of your company's debt. If you say one more word to my wife, I will call my board of directors and liquidate Vance Logistics before midnight." Arthur dropped to his knees right there on the marble floor of his own gala, completely broken, begging with his eyes. Julian stood paralyzed, utterly humiliated in front of the entire city's elite. Without another word, I wrapped my arm tightly around Clara's waist, turning our backs on her father and walking toward the exit like royalty. As we stepped out into the quiet, cool night air away from the cameras, the adrenaline was still pumping through my veins. We stood by the heavy oak doors of the mansion, illuminated only by the soft glow of the streetlights. Clara stopped in her tracks, looking up at me with wide, breathtaking eyes. She was shaking, but not from fear, from awe. You destroyed them," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Who are you, Leo?" "I'm just a man who protects what's his," I said softly, stepping closer to her, my hand gently resting on the side of her neck. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at my lips, then back into my eyes, her cheeks flushing with warmth. "The agreement," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "You asked a question in the coffee shop." "I did," I replied, my eyes dropping to her soft lips. "I asked if I get to kiss my wife." "We're outside the party now, Leo," she murmured, stepping even closer, her chest touching mine. There are no cameras here. You don't have to pretend anymore. I smiled, my thumb gently tracing her cheekbone as I looked deep into her soul. Who said I was pretending? Before she could answer, I leaned down and captured her lips with mine in a deep, passionate kiss. Clara gasped against my mouth, her arms instantly wrapping around my neck, pulling me closer as she gave in completely to the heat between us. The rain fell around us, but neither of us felt the cold. When I finally pulled back, Clara was breathless, resting her forehead against mine, a beautiful smile spreading across her face. "So," she whispered softly, clutching my jacket, "are you taking your wife home now?" I smiled, picking her up in my arms and walking toward the truck, knowing that our fake story had just become the best real chapter of my life.